So as our project stands at the moment, we can create a new short URL and the user can go ahead and actually copy that to their clipboard manually. But it would be nice to actually give them the opportunity to have a button just to click and actually do that copy for them. So what we're going to do in this tutorial, we're just going to create the button and style it. And then in the next tutorial, we'll set up the JavaScript or TypeScript code that will actually copy the URL that we've created onto the user's clipboard. So as you can see at the moment, we don't have a button in there. So let's go ahead and add it into our code. So we'll head on over to our markup to start off with. Where we want our button to appear is inside or adjacent to the URL that's being created. So that's probably the best place for it. So if we put it inside of here and say, let's create a button element just called copy. What you'll find is when we actually save that, and if we go back and reload the web app, when we create a new Rickroll URL, the button doesn't appear. And that's because in our TypeScript code, when we generate this URL and display it to the user, we're actually overwriting everything, all of the content that's inside of this particular element. So that's the first thing we need to fix. We need to go over to our TypeScript code just to make a slight adjustment here. So as you can see here, we've got the URL result is the div that contains the URL, and we're just updating its text content, and that is removing that button element from inside of there. So instead of just setting the text content property, what we can do is we can call a function and we'll say insert adjacent HTML. And this function takes two arguments. The second is the content that you actually want to put in there. So what we're going to put in is the result URL, but we'll wrap that inside of a span as well. So let's just use a template literal to do that. So that's the HTML that we want to put into that div. But where do we want to put it? We want to put it right at the start, before any other elements, such as the button that we've just added. So we'll say after begin is the place where we want to put that content. So this will just place this span with the URL into the URL result div, but it'll put it before the button and it will also preserve it. So just to test that out, if we save it and then go back to the app and click to create a new Rickroll, you can see the button's then preserved, but we've also still got the URL being added into that div. So that's pretty much our button sorted, but whilst we're here in this tutorial, we're going to do the styling for it as well. So let's go on to our styles.scss. Or actually, before we do that, what we'll do is just add a class to this button as well so that we can pick it out in our SCSS. So we'll just say copy button, for example, is the class that we're going to apply to it. And then if we go back to our style sheet, there's a few things we're going to do. So first of all, within this result div, what we'll do is we'll just make sure that everything's aligned in terms of its vertical alignment and also the horizontal alignment. And so what we'll do here is just say the display is flex, align items is center, so that will have the vertical, the two items vertically aligned. And then also we'll say the justify content is space between. So this will just push the URL to the left and the copy button to the right. And whilst we're here, we'll do the styling for that as well. So we'll say the copy BTN that's inside of here. We were putting some margin on the other button that was inside of the strapline div. So we're going to pick this out specifically and take off any margin. We'll give it a border of 2 pixels, solid and white, using our white variable there. And we'll also put a bit of padding on there. So we'll say padding is 1 rem is probably enough. And also the color of the text is going to be that white color too. I'm also going to put a hover transition on here as well, which isn't great for mobile because it just basically won't work. But just so you've got some nice bit of UI interaction for anyone who is doing this on a desktop. So first of all, we'll just set the transition property of all the properties on this element to be 3.3 seconds. And then using our SCSS styling here, we'll say the hover state when the button is hovered over. What we'll do is we'll say the background color is going to be white and the color of the actual text will be black. And I don't think we've set up a black variable yet, so let's create one up here at the top of our style sheet. So we've got black, and we'll just set that as 000 to give us a solid black color. And also, just before we finish up, so we're going to transition basically the background color and the text color, but the background color hasn't got anything set here at the moment, and I'm just going to set the background color to be transparent, just so we see some of the Rick Astley image coming through as we're doing that div currently. So if we just save that and go back to our page, if we create another Rickroll, you can see now we've got our copy button over here on the right, and it's been pushed to the very right hand side of the element, and we've got this hover transition as well. We can click the button, but nothing is happening at the moment. But you can see we've got the components there for the user to actually click a button and actually get the URL copied onto their clipboard. So that's what we're going to be doing in the next web dev tip. We're going to just hook up this button to an event listener and get this text copied onto the clipboard. But that's it for this tutorial. Make sure you stay tuned for more web dev tips.